When your movie becomes the #1 R-rated comedy of all time, you're probably going to want to make another one. Heck, I wanted another one. But sometimes there are problems in the process and it turns out like this.
Do that again.
This time on Do That Again, The Hangover. Now you may have liked the second Hangover, but it's fairly safe to say that it killed the franchise. If you go by Rotten Tomatoes scores, it went from 79% fresh to 33%. The audience score, 84% to 52%. Fans of the first came back for the second, almost doubling the first weekend box office, but they clearly felt burned by part 2, and didn't come back for the third. Instead of continuing the story of the first, the sequel is basically just the first one, but in Thailand. Same jokes, same story. Here are some, well, a lot of examples. A teaser with Phil calling Tracy. Alan drinks the Jaeger, Alan drinks the marshmallows. Doug goes missing, Teddy goes missing. Stu loses a tooth, Stu gets a face tattoo. Cute baby, cute monkey. Check the pockets in Vegas, check the pockets in Thailand. Vegas doctor, Thai doctor. Brian Callen, Brian Callen. Stu gets married, Stu gets banged by a ladyboy. Attacked by cops, attacked by monks. Naked Chow, more tiny Ken Jong penis. Alan admits it was him, Alan admits it was him. Singing Tyson, singing Tyson. Stu song, Allentown. Business Chow, business Giamatti. Car chase with a tiger, car chase with a monkey. Black Doug, old Teddy. Stu figures it out again and tackles Phil for the phone. Friends were at the beginning all along. Race to the wedding. And elevator shots. Elevator shot. Elevator shot. Elevator shot. Todd Phillips really loves elevators. They even go as minute as using the same artists on the same beats, that sounded like other songs, like this in the opening credits from Danzig.
I was born in the soul of misery,
And again, Danzig.
I think it's time to let it out again.
You'll hear it over and over between both movies, again with Kanye, with Wolfmother, and with Flo Rida. You start to see the diminishing returns in the supporting characters, taking a steep drop off from the original to the sequel. You start with Mr. Chow, the great antagonist of the first, going to Paul Giamatti, who's a strange, forgettable government agent in the second, that gets about 7 minutes of screen time and does a little more interesting than take Alan's hat. In the first, we had Mike Tyson bringing back the greatness of Phil Collins, and in the second, Nick Cassavetes, who wouldn't have even been funny if it had been Mel Gibson or Liam Neeson as they had originally intended. We even start to see what I think is the downfall of Ken Jeong entirely, leaning way too hard into the insanity of Chow and turning him into an entirely different character for the sequel. Just look at the immediate difference on screen between the last time we see Chow in the first and the first time we see him in the second. In an interview with Shave magazine, Bradley Cooper managed to divert from what I assume was a conversation about beards, and said about making the sequel, when we first talked about a sequel in a realistic way, and we were all in the room together afterwards, we were saying, here's the choice. Do we stray from the structure, or do we run straight for it? And we all agreed, no question about it, we hadn't earned the ability to take these 3 guys out and put them in a new structure. There needs to be a ticking clock, there needs to be a Miss Knight, and there needs to be someone who's gone and a woman who's waiting to get married, and a guy who needs to get married. Now there's a lot right in that statement, but some of it's just lazy. When he says there needs to be a Miss Knight, he's right on the money. If Hangover is defined by one thing, it's the structure. But the ticking clock, the missing person, and the wedding are all just examples of stakes. And of course the movie needs to have stakes. But to repeat the same ones are just lazy. Yes, every superhero origin movie comes down to a guy getting powers and saving the day, but Marvel's able to keep them fresh by making them all feel different. Whether it's the more comedic heist of Ant-Man, the spirituality of Doctor Strange, the space rock opera of Guardians of the Galaxy, but here we're looking at the same characters. So how are you supposed to keep it the same while also changing it up? Well, let's look at the characters. If someone asked you what The Hangover is about, you might say it's about 3 guys who lose their friend at his bachelor party and have to find him and get him back before he misses his wedding. But you'd be falling for the MacGuffin. In fact, the marriage doesn't really matter at all, which is why it's fine that Doug disappeared for most of the movie. It's not about him. Honestly, it's not about anything. If you think about it, if the guys just remember that Doug was on the roof, none of the rest of the movie needs to happen. Between returning the police car, the baby, the tiger, and Chow's money, they're really just cleaning up all their messes. They could have just found Doug, sent him home at any point of the movie, and just missed the wedding themselves. But there are actually some interesting character arcs within cleaning up the messes that makes it all worthwhile. For Alan, that's fitting in. Finding a way to fit in with other guys and let people into his own life. He's always been a loner, and he's never had a reason not to be. Meanwhile, Stu's dealing with the issue that he's so insecure that he's about to commit to a relationship with the wrong woman. It's only by getting blackout drunk that he's able to accept the truth that he wants something else. even if that means going way too far in the other direction. But by the time we pick up in part 2, we've lost track of where the characters are. Alan's back to being a loner. Somehow Stu found the right woman to marry, but we have no idea how they met. And as for Doug and Phil, they never really went through any emotional growth in the first place, so they don't start now. So with all that, we can start building out a story for the sequel. We know that these guys are going to make a mess and spend the bulk of the movie cleaning it up. There's got to be a missing night. There need to be stakes and a ticking clock so that there's some real need for them to figure out what's happened ASAP. Doug's going to be in the very beginning and fall out of the story again. We're going to need to use Chow again because he's clearly a fan favorite. We're going to find ways to introduce new characters, whether it be a funny cameo or a new antagonist. And most of all, we're going to find a way to tell the story in a different way, all while staying true to the original, preserving the humiliations and uninhibited drunken debauchery, and continuing the character arcs in the process. Here's the pitch. We start with a teaser just like the first one. Phil's out of options and has to call Tracy, but we pull out and reveal that he's in prison, and Doug's about to get the chair. Cut back to 6 months earlier, and Phil's listening to his students give speeches in front of the class. He's taking notes on what they say. Cut to him pulling in at Tracy and Alan's parents' house, where they're hosting a party to announce the gender of Doug and Tracy's first baby. Phil raises his glass and gives a speech, and it's word for word what his student just said. Stu introduces his new girlfriend, who looks exactly like the girl he broke up with at the end of the last one. We'll notice that Alan's not there, and Doug says he's traveling the world with Chow. Suddenly, a massive gender reveal cake rolls in, and out of it explodes Alan, covered in blue cake. The guests are pretty surprised. Alan tells the guys about an awesome party Chow's throwing on his boat, and Phil convinces Doug to go for one last banger before fatherhood. They go to Chow's, and it's amazing. Even Stu's having a good time. He's chatting it up with a gorgeous woman, Jamie Chung, who we'll see more of later. Alan goes to Phil, expecting him to have loved the cake reveal, but he tells him it wasn't a good move. Alan's really hurt that his idol isn't impressed. Chow comes out for the party, carried by gorgeous women, and grabs a tray of shots. He toasts to the night, and we fade to black. Now we come back as you might expect by now. Party boat trashed. Alan starts looking around and wakes up Stu, who immediately runs to a mirror, but there's nothing wrong. Then they think to look for Doug, and they find him covered in blood. But not his blood. They look beside him and see Chow's decapitated head. Stu loses it, and Phil starts immediately planning the cover-up. Then they realize they're nowhere near land, and worse, the Coast Guard arrives and arrests them. They're interrogated, but they've got no memory of what happened, just getting on the boat. Alan, even less. Not even the cake. The trial goes by in a montage of clips, like Mike Tyson and his bodyguard saying, "They do dumb shit when they're fucked up." The prosecutor repeats, "Dumb shit," like murder. Phil, Stu, and Alan get accessory to murder, but Doug gets the death penalty and is sent to solitary. The guys hope to appeal, but first they have to survive San Quentin. They get their cellmates, Phil with a wimpy guy, Alan with a skinhead, and Stu with a big dude, your scary prison boyfriend type. They come together in the cafeteria at chow time and try to figure things out, but they've got no memory. Stu gets a visitor and expects his girlfriend, but actually it's Jamie Chung. And she's got news. She's pregnant. Stu tells the guys, and Alan thinks it's great news, but Stu's petrified. They know now that they need a way out, so they decide that one of them needs to get into solitary and talk to Doug. Phil gets the short straw and has to punch Alan's skinhead roommate in the yard. But when he gets up, Phil blames Alan, and Alan gets sent to solitary instead. Alan does talk to Doug, but he's got just as little memory as them. And Alan starts going crazy in solitary. He feels betrayed by Phil, and more alone than ever. Meanwhile, Stu and his roommate grow close, as his roommate is a caring father who talks about the beauty of being a dad. He cuddles Stu as his little spoon, and Stu feels safe in his caring arms. We will also get to see Stu get his Tyson tattoo again, but here it comes in the prison. Phil gets suspicious of a guy in the yard that he recognizes from Chow's party, and he confronts him, but makes matters worse because the guy is Chinese mafia, and they put out a hit on him. Alan returns from solitary and expects his roommate to hurt him, but he respects Alan's crazy side. He starts giving Alan's Wolfpack speech about when he was alone and crazy, but he found a family, and he invites Alan into that crew. He shaves Alan's head, gives him a swastika tattoo, and suddenly, Alan's in the White Power gang. Phil tries to talk to Alan about what he learned from Doug, but Alan's still mad. Not that he has any info anyway. He's happy with his new Wolfpack. Stu's future baby mama visits again and gives Stu an ultrasound. We see him take in what he sees. And this takes us to the climax and back to the teaser. Phil calls Tracy to tell her they're out of answers, and she starts going into labor. Meanwhile, Doug's going to the chair. Phil gets cornered by the Chinese mafia, and it seems dire, but then, just in time, Alan and the White Power gang come to save the day. A massive riot breaks out. Stu gets caught in the headlights when a guy attacks, but his boyfriend steps in and takes the shiv. They have one last embrace. Stu gains his courage and runs the guys to safety with one of Chow's men. He reveals that there was a message in the ultrasound that led him there. After the riot, the guards take the guys out. They're brought to a room where they're reunited with Doug, and an agent shows them footage of Chow spotted in Thailand. They're free. They rush Doug to the hospital and make it just in time to see his son born. Stu's baby mama arrives and reveals that she wasn't actually pregnant all along. They didn't even have sex because Stu thought it would be too fast. She respects that, and he asks her on a real date. We also learn she's Chow's daughter. Stu returns to filling out in the waiting room, and a doctor comes out that we'll recognize. Dr. Ken, Mr. Chow. And he's got a camera full of photos. The end. Oh yeah, at number 3, Stu does marry Jamie Chung, but Phil's wife leaves him. He gets depressed and goes drinking with his brother, his co-star from Wedding Crashers, and Todd Phillips' old school buddy, Vince Vaughn. Thanks for watching. If you think I'm an idiot and you think all of this is stupid, tell me so in the comments. Or if not, give me a like or a subscribe, and keep your eyes out for the next episode, which will be about a guy with a very special set of skills.